Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today, Contemporary Issues class. We are so pleased to have Logan Robertson with us today. Talk about After Hours Denver. Tell us all about what he is doing there and answer our questions. And welcome to Zoomers. Our usual announcements. Zoomers, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback. And any other announcements? Things going on? Anybody been making any trips they want to share about? Dr. Bob and Jan just got back from the Ozarks. Was that where you were?
Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri.
Missouri?
No,
Hot.
I do not say that. It was hot,
Yes.
but we did not have nearly as many bugs as we expected.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
That's always good.
had a fabulous week.
Good. Doctor, we saw the video of Dr. Bob water skiing on his solo water ski. You are amazing.
At the age of 81.
At 81,
Yeah.
you're just hopping over the wake and
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it's incredible.
We had 23 of us staying in one house, and we had the age of 3 to 81 who all water skied.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
It's amazing.
one. It was pretty busy.
That's great. Okay. Vicki, any other announcements? Were things coming up? Okay. All right, with that, let me go ahead and introduce Logan to you and read just a little bit about what his website says. The website for After Hours says there are good people being left out, excluded, and avoided from mainstream church communities. Many of these people who work late nights, frequent bars, and have dirty mouths. But we are those people who are seeking to make spaces for those misfits, outcasts, and rogues, so they can experience God's love also. So the bar ministry that Logan leads has been going 12 years, is it about?
Yeah.
About
12 or 13.
Okay, and they meet in a different bar each Monday night.
That's right.
Okay. And Logan, prior to leading this ministry, was assistant to the director at the Network Coffee House, a hospitality house not far from Civic Center Park, where the focus is on building long-term redemptive relationships with folks who make their home on the street. Logan also has worked organizing housing and service on behalf of those folks and against criminalization of the homelessness. So we want to talk about homeless today also. Logan and his wife Elizabeth live in Lakewood with their kids, Nora, Liam, and Marcella, and their dog, Rosie. Okay, with that, welcome, Logan.
Thank you.
So just tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good description of After Hours. After Hours is a church. We don't have a building. Our buildings are the places where we meet. So we meet at a different bar each week. So this upcoming Monday night at 7 o'clock, we'll be at Don's Club Tavern, which is on 6th Avenue. I don't think it's technically Cap Hill, but it's sort of that vicinity. And then we meet at a different bar the week after. So the week after we'll be at Dive In, which is on South Broadway. Then we'll be at Cap City Tavern, which is kind of over by the jail and the courthouse, if you know where that is in Denver. And then we've kind of been trying to find a stable place for our 4th Monday. And so we try to rotate and be at the same bar each week. After Hours' mission is to put more love into the world by providing necessities for people who need them, especially the homeless, and by creating places where everyone is welcome. And so obviously the places where we go already exist, the bars that we go already exist. But when we go into those bars, our goal is to create a place in just a very short amount of time where everyone would feel welcome. And so that includes anyone who is interested in church, in social issues, right? Like this group, in sharing community, but specifically the issue of homelessness. That's one of our big ministries. But in doing all that and perhaps not being super comfortable walking into a church building, right? Either because they've had experiences in church, which make them feel less than included, right? Every church is not as inclusive as St. Andrew UMC, for instance. Either because they have that kind of experience where church is kind of a big turnoff, or because of the way that I think many Christians unfortunately characterize church out in the culture, right? As a place which is less than welcoming, less than inclusive, less than loving, right? Which I think all of us kind of fail to live up to the example of Christ. However, some of us fail worse. Right? Some of us fail harder, I think. And so I think there's a lot of reasons people don't go to church. And that being said, the folks who walk in the door at after hours, some of them are kind of dyed-in-the-wool Christians. Maybe they're Methodists, maybe they grew up Catholic, maybe they grew up, right, Presbyterian, whatever. But we also have folks who really have no religious affiliation at all. There's one person in particular at after hours who claims to be an atheist. She just comes because she wants to be a part of something good, right? That's kind of cool. Another person who's on our leadership team says that she's a hopeful agnostic, which I love. I love that idea, hopeful agnostic. I think there are definitely times where that's about as far as I can get. Like, yeah, hopeful agnostic pretty much describes it. I have other better days where I really feel like that faith in Christ and in God and the church is stronger. But on the days where I feel like a hopeful agnostic, I feel okay, and I feel good that there's a faith community out there which is pretty explicit in its welcome of those folks. So the way that things look at after hours when we meet, we gather, say welcome, to church, and our call to worship is making lunches. So right now we make 100 lunches, peanut butter and jelly sack lunches, very similar to the lunches that are being made, if not right now, then have already been made there in the lobby outside of the sanctuary. And so those peanut butter and jelly lunches include a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, chips, some fruit, and then a Truly granola bar or like a breakfast bar, like a Nutri-Grain bar. And those lunches get put together, and we take them down right now. The next day, we take them down to the Denver Central Library, which is right there across the street from Civic Center Park. We partner with the library because Civic Center Park, which has been kind of after hours mission field, so to speak, is closed. So there are food trucks and things like that and different events that are happening at Civic Center Park, but no one's really allowed to just hang out in the park, especially if you're homeless. And that's been true since last September, October, last year. And actually maybe it goes back further than that. So not last October, the October before. Yeah. So that's been closed to us as after hours and to people experiencing homelessness as well. So you got to find somewhere else to be if you're homeless. One of the places where people go and went before COVID and before this recent closure of Civic Center Park is the Central Library. And the Central Library and the different branch libraries in Denver around the city are one of the major, largest service providers for homeless folks in the city because it's a public place, right? And so what the library has done is set itself up rather than kind of resisting the idea that they're a service provider. They've set themselves up as a service provider. They have peer navigators, people who have experienced homelessness in the past who are there to help help the folks who are in homelessness currently, to try to exit homelessness. And it helps to have some experience, and it helps people who are experiencing homelessness to talk to people who have experience. So that's why they hire peer navigators. Excuse me. And then they have social workers as well, case managers, people who are there to kind of handle the more complicated cases and paperwork and filing for disability and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually been, although we wish we could be in Civic Center Park, it's been great to partner with the library, to get to know those folks, peer navigators and social workers at the library better than we had before, and to know that those lunches that we make are making their way to folks who need that lunch, right? So over the years, After Hours has partnered with other groups, other churches, including St. Andrew UMC, other UMC churches, a couple law offices, marketing company, and even a synagogue as well, and to be in the park every single day of the week. And unfortunately, we're not in the park every single day of the week anymore, because that mission field is closed down to us. There are places where homeless people gather, but not as sort of stably and consistently as they were in Civic Center. So we're building that back up. There's another park that we go to called Benedict Fountain Park, which has been a good place to meet people and to distribute lunches. We also bring lunches to Network Coffee House, which Steve mentioned, where I've had a shift for 9 years. And that's been a good place to distribute lunches and meet people as well. And the lunches are only part of it, right? The lunch kind of helps us gain the space. It's a way to kind of say hello and really, I mean, give something out that people need. People do need a meal, but what people need more than a meal is that love that I mentioned as part of our mission. The lunch is just an opportunity to look somebody in the eye, shake somebody's hand, and not necessarily say I love you, although we do say I love you, but to communicate some dignity, to see somebody who is often not seen by the world, to get to know somebody's name who everyone out there is not asking, what's your name? Who are you? How long you been here? What kind of movies do you like? You know, what do you like to read? What kind of music do you listen to? All those very, very simple questions that we ask each other in the course of becoming friends, right? So what we're doing is we're becoming friends with people. Peanut butter and jelly sack lunch is not always what I bring when I meet a new friend, but it works pretty well with After Hours. We also, oops, I turned this off. Am I back? Am I back now? There we go. We also bring water, right? Especially when it's really, really hot like it has been. Water's something that will save your life. We also bring socks. We get huge donations from Bombas socks. So if you need a pair of socks and you can get to the Bombas website, do it, because the socks really do. They're not just saying that about donating socks. They donate them to us here at After Hours. They donate them to, for instance, Showers for All. Some of you probably know Jen Kleppel. And so we see a ton of socks from them, probably too many, actually, probably too many. But actually, like, you can't have too many socks if you're homeless. Taking care of your feet and having a dry pair of socks on is a huge part of being well on the street. So water, socks, and the sack lunches. And then we have a couple of special events during the year. One is Thankful for Long Johns, where we on Thanksgiving Day distribute thermal underwear sets to folks. That's another thing that can save your life. An extra layer of clothes when it's cold in that sleeping bag can keep you alive, if not just comfortable, right? So that's Thanksgiving, and then of course Christmas in the park. is our Christmas Day event, where we distribute cold weather gear. So that includes sleeping bags, it includes long underwear, it includes bags, it includes boots, it includes gloves and hats, all the things you might think of, right, that you need in Colorado in the winter on Christmas Day. And we distribute anywhere from 500 to 800, or distribute gear to 500 to 800 people. The way we do that count is by how many sleeping bags we give out. And the sleeping bags are organized by this church, by St. Andrew, and driven down to the park by that good-looking guy right there, Keith. So it's awesome to have St. Andrew as a partner in that work. And those sleeping bags are a huge resource for people for staying warm. During the winter. So, yeah.
So Logan, you all do a lot more than just talk to people in bars.
Yeah.
But tell us what you do on Monday nights, for example. Do you have a room in Don's?
Yeah.
Barn, and then do you have a regular service, or?
Yeah.
Kind of take us through what.
Sure, yeah, so I got sidetracked.
That's okay.
We were at the call to worship, which is making the lunches, right? Most churches, most Protestant churches, the sort of peak of worship is the sermon, usually.
Sure.
Right? At a Catholic church or an Orthodox church, the peak of worship is communion, right? And we do communion in the Protestant church, but really like the top moment in worship is usually the sermon. The top moment in worship at after hours is the call to worship, right? The very first thing that we do, right? And the call to worship is a way to say, come to worship. This is who we are. This is what we're doing. Why are we here? Right? That's kind of it's kind of like a thesis statement for worship at the beginning of the service. So it's sort of funny that the biggest thing we do is our call to worship. We're saying, this is who we are. We believe in this. We believe in doing this ministry. And some people leave after the call to worship. Some people come and make lunches and they split, right? I want to try to wrangle those people in a little bit at a time to like stay for the full hour and a half, right? But I'm okay with that. If they come and they get something out of making those lunches,
okay,
and having some community just for a few minutes in that way, that's fine with me. And Jesus can love them that way.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not all we do. We make those lunches, we put them all together, we pack them up, say a blessing over the lunches. Then we'll read some scripture usually. Sometimes I'll bring in something else, a different reading or something like that. But church feels kind of important to me to read some scripture. So we'll read some scripture, and then we have a sermon / discussion time. Oftentimes my sermon turns into a discussion whether I want it to or not. And that's okay, right? That's the culture at after hours, is that it's okay to sort of shout out a question in the middle of the sermon.
How many people do you usually have?
It depends between 15 and 25 is kind of what I hope for, you know. It could go beyond that, that'd be okay with me, but it seems like these days we kind of top out at 25.
Are they regulars usually, or new
yeah,
people too?
Mostly regulars. We do have new people. We've seen more new people recently, which has been nice, and we've seen some kind of like folks who maybe came 5-8 years ago coming back, which is very heartening to me, because it means like, well, I guess they're doing something that people are like recognizing as after hours, right? When old folks kind of start returning. And so, yeah, a lot of regulars. We have a core of regulars who are, if they're not there every week, then they're there a couple times a month. And actually, regular church attendance these days is twice a month. If you go to church twice a month, you're a very regular church attendee.
For any church.
Any church in the United States, yeah, twice a month is very regular. And we have people coming more than twice a month, so I feel like we're doing okay. And yeah, so we have that sermon time, discussion time. Sometimes I have a straight sermon, 15 minutes or so on some topic. And other times I bring 3 or 4 discussion questions. I try to kind of set the table and then let the group go. And the real beauty at after hours is when that discussion, even though I'm kind of leading the discussion, when the discussion goes places where I was hoping it would go and then goes beyond those places. So the real genius in the group, the real theological genius comes from the group, not just from one person. And that's a deep value for me, that I don't have all the answers. Like, yeah, I've got a fancy degree and all that stuff, but like, what do I really know? You know, what really is going to be exciting is when the Holy Spirit starts to kind of speak in the group. It gets really exciting when somebody says something and I'm like, I didn't think of that. That's awesome. Right. So that's what I love. I'm also one of the only pastors in town who gets to drink a beer while I preach, right? That's not bad. That's not bad either. I feel lucky. I feel lucky about that. So we have that sermon discussion time. Then we share what we call our happies and crappies. And that's our highs and lows, right? Highs and lows from the week, from the month, from just life in general, current events, what's happening in your life, right? So we share happies and crappies, do a kind of, prayer for people, announcements, and then we try to tip as well as we can, because that's kind of how we pay rent. One of the sort of unstated missions of After Hours is that we're trying to take care of people in the service industry. So Monday night is a slow night. So that's why we gather on Monday nights, because it's easy to say like, hey, I'm going to bring 15, 25 people to your bar. What do you think? And they're like, sure. Like, okay, sounds good. Right. You asked kind of what do the spaces look like? So Don's, for instance, is a dive. It's a dive bar. Right. They have food, but it's in a vending machine and it's a White Castle burger, right? So they technically have to have food, so that's why they have that. I think those White Castle burgers have been there a very long time.
Oh, dear.
I don't think I would get one of those for myself. And it's kind of it's actually, honestly, it's a room not much bigger than this room. It's a little bigger, but it's not much bigger. And we kind of have one corner. They put a reserve sign on some of the tables. Excuse me. They put a reserve sign on some of the tables. That's where we gather. That's where we make the meals. That's where we have our conversation. Don's is a great example of doing church in public. People are like, what are those people doing? Why are they making those lunches? Who is that guy, right? Kind of trying to yell over the noise of the bar, like what's going on over there? And people come and ask, right? And it's inspiring to me as a Methodist, because that's kind of what John Wesley did. He would be very upset that we're meeting in a bar, I think.
He didn't believe in it.
Yeah, I don't think he may have been a teetotaler. Actually, I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that. But I don't think he would have been real happy the fact that we're meeting in a bar. However, people were not happy with him in his day and age for preaching outside, right? But preaching outside, people were like, what are those people doing over there? Right? What's he talking about? And so I believe in doing church in a building. I think that that's a good thing. It's a great resource, right? Like, where would we keep 500 sleeping bags if we didn't have somewhere to keep them? Right? And so buildings are important. But getting out of the building is equally important, if not more important. Right? When you start to do church in public, when you do something outside, when you do something in a public place, when you do something in a bar, people are like, what those people look weird. What are they doing? And in a place like Don's, maybe they're lubricated enough to come and ask. Right? They're not shy about coming and asking, what are you guys doing? Where are those lunches going? Right? And then we get to say, well, we're bringing these lunches to serve homeless people tomorrow. They're like, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Well, yeah, you're welcome. We do it because we're a church. Like, what? Right? So,
and Logan,
yeah.
Can we clarify that your ministry is an official ministry of the Methodist Church? You're part of the Mountain Sky Conference?
Yep, we're one of the churches of the Mountain Sky Conference.
You have a salary from the conference?
I have a salary from the church, just like Just like the St. Andrews pays their pastors,
Okay.
After Hours pays me. Yeah,
Okay.
so the money's not coming from the conference, the money's coming from, from
From-
members of After Hours. We actually only officially have like 3 members. Because we're not like, people are like, join something. But I'll give you my money. I'm like, well, as long as you give me your money, I'm cool. I guess. So I can keep having a job.
It's a really good salary.
But
But it's an alternative ministry model.
different church model.
Different
Yep,
church model.
yep, definitely a kind of out there model for church. Yeah,
Are there similar models and bar ministries across the world?
I think there are other churches that meet in bars. I know that there are a lot of churches that do sort of like brood theology, right? Like they do like a bar night. So like maybe on a Wednesday night, you might meet in the bar and have, I don't think you would call it a Sunday school necessarily, but you have that kind of class type of meeting, right? You just do it in a bar. There's a lot of that. I don't think there's a lot of churches that are like, we don't have a building, we just meet in bars. I don't think that's very common. I don't think it's impossible to do elsewhere. I think that other folks can do it. But you know, people always used to ask Jerry Herships, right, the founding pastor, how do I start a bar ministry? He's like, well, do you like to hang out in bars? Like, well, no, I don't. Well, you probably shouldn't start a bar ministry. Right? Not a good idea. You got to find a place that you like, right? So that could be a coffee shop, it could be a park, it could be a gaming store, you know, like a tabletop gaming store is kind of nerdy thing. Could be a lot of things, but if you don't like hanging out there in the first place, it's not going to work. So yeah, there's different places. So Don's is that one place, big room. And then like our third Monday place, Cap City Tavern, we have our own kind of, we're in the pool room, so we have our own space. So when I really want to like talk about something from scripture that's more detailed, I kind of tend to save it for there because everybody can hear me well. But at Don's, it's a little bit more discussion based. I'll throw out some discussions and people can kind of talk at their tables. So yeah, it just depends week to week, kind of what the bar looks like, and that kind of shapes what we can do and how our time together kind of feels, and it also, you know, people really love the food at Cap City, but they might not really love the food at another place, and so maybe they don't come to the other place. It's like, I don't want to eat dinner there, right? So yeah, it's odd, but yeah.
They serve food at Don's, do they?
No, just the White Castle in the vending machine. Yeah,
Yeah, because I've gone there for Chiefs games, because it's.
yeah, it's a big Chiefs bar. We get
Chiefs bar.
it's not good for us, the Chiefs being good, because
No.
well, because we get bumped on when they play on Monday nights, and the better you are, the more Monday nights you might play, right? So so that's another thing. We also got, you know, when the Nuggets were playing in the playoffs, we got bumped out of dive in because they were like, hey, we're gonna be busy. You guys gotta go somewhere else. We're like, geez. So I'm kind of scrambling at the last minute sometimes to find a place. But the boiler is also not gonna explode in the basement, right? So there's trade-offs, right? There's a lot of pastors dealing with plumbing issues in the boiler, and you know, we gotta fix the roof, and I don't have to think about any of that. I just have to scramble now and then to find a different spot. So yeah.
Well, you know, I just
Can we open it up to questions?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Steve and I have been watching, The Chosen. And, I think what you do is amazing, because Jesus would go, no one else would go. And the Pharisees would all stand around and judge, you know, so I think it's amazing that you do what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And, I think it should be encouraged, and I just think it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that. Yeah. But yeah, we can open up to questions. If you have questions about after hours and the bar ministry, that's great. If you have questions about homelessness, which is obviously a big issue right now, I'm happy to field those too. I have some expertise there. So go ahead.
Get to that. Susie.
I want to know what you think about the new mayor.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to, well, he just did a sweep the other day.
Yeah.
But they talked to a man on TV and he seemed hopeful. Because it's just so ridiculous. they sweep you from here, well, I know where to go, I think I'll go over here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, so, I guess move them around, you just move around, I mean, they said there were rats there and other issues. So what do you think about the new mayor? Do you think he's gonna do any help?
Yeah, so I don't vote in Denver, I voted in Jeffco, but I would have voted for Johnston, I liked his campaign a lot. I'm actually part of a service provider meeting, a weekly service provider meeting now that the mayor pulled together on his first day in office.
Good.
So there's about a dozen service providers represented at that meeting. Maybe there was probably, I don't know, 24 of us, 30 of us at that first meeting. And I think it's a big deal that at 10:30 on his first day in office, he had a meeting with service providers to discuss homelessness.
Right, yeah.
So everybody experiences homelessness now. Right? What do I mean by that? Yeah.
It was in the news, it's up 30% in Denver in the last year.
Yeah, so the last point in time count, which is it's a housing and urban development sort of directive that every metro counts how many people are experiencing homelessness on any given night, right? So that usually happens sometime in January in Denver, and the count was way up this year. Does that actually mean there's more homelessness? It just means they did a better job counting maybe, but it also maybe means that there are more people experiencing homelessness. And we still have fallouts from COVID of people falling into homelessness because of what's happened with housing prices and because what's happened with the economy around jobs and work and all that kind of stuff.
And refugees.
Yeah, and the refugees have been an issue as well. But to the question, Johnston, I'm choosing to be hopeful. I like his approach. His first day in office, he declared a state of emergency, which frees up funds and some ways to pull together experts and people within the city bureaucracy to just get wheels moving in ways that you can't do if there's not a state of emergency. I think that was smart. He also said that they have a goal, although it's kind of a floating goal between now and December 31st to house, and I put house in scare quotes for a reason I'll tell you, to house 1,000 people.
Yep.
Now, what is housing, right? The question is, what is housing? And the most kind of radical voices in Denver are going to say a house is an apartment with a door that locks. I think that's a fine position to take. And I'm glad that position exists because it kind of creates room for all these other options.
Right.
So basically what they're going to do is give people options. They want to give people kind of a buffet to say, we might have permanent supportive housing available. We might have safe outdoor space units available. And safe outdoor space is like a sanctioned encampment where there's services available and places to go to the bathroom and at least one square meal every day and all that. So a safe outdoor space, a tiny home, a hotel, traditional shelter options, and they want to increase the availability of all these different options. So they want to increase the amount of hotels that are available, that are kind of owned by the city or that have a lease with the city to provide these spaces. They want to increase the amount of tiny home villages. They want to increase the amount of safe outdoor spaces. They want to increase the amount of shelter. They want to basically, in that first meeting that we had with the mayor, he said, I want all options on the table, all of the above.
Yeah.
We're going to hit it in every way we can. And he also said, and I think this is important, there's not going to be a mission accomplished banner, so to speak. All right. It's charged, but maybe not as charged as it was 20 years ago. There's not going to be a mission accomplished banner. There's no 10-year plan to solve homelessness. But he says we can do better and we can put more options out there. And it's important to give people options because we're talking about human beings, right? We're talking about people who you can't just say like, okay, here's your one option. If somebody comes to me and says, here's your one option, I'm like, why don't you give me another option? Because that option that's not an option. It's just a directive, right? But a place like Houston, they have found that when they give people options of where they could go, other than being camped on the street, 90% of people accept those options, at least at first. there's some nuance between what's happening in Houston and what's happening here. But it's an interesting point, right? And so they've identified, and I'll get to you in 1 second, they've identified 100 and I think it was 147 city-owned properties where they could either build tiny homes or safe outdoor spaces or housing. And then they've also identified over 500 private places where the city could potentially buy either a hotel, a building, an empty lot, a parking lot, etc., to really push and get places where people can go, create more options in every neighborhood in the city. That's the other thing that's important, is that this is not just a Denver issue, or not just a downtown Denver issue, I should say. It's an issue that should be held by that whole city, and I would say by the whole metro area, right? And so the city of Denver is working with the city of Aurora. We really have a Twin Cities thing going here. We don't really think about Aurora as big as Denver, but it really is a huge city now, right? And they have tons of land that Denver doesn't have. So the city of Denver and the city of Aurora are working together, and then the city is hoping, I think, to work more closely with other suburbs as well, including, right, like Jefferson County, for instance, and all the suburbs that are represented there. So I'm choosing to be hopeful. There are parts about the plan that I kind of disagree with. I won't go into that right now unless you want me to later. But I think it's a start, and I think it's a better approach than what Mayor Hancock did. Yeah.
Just kind of interested, are there like families at all, or are there young children like runaways that come, or, you know, who is your audience? I mean, that you're trying to find a place for them to live.
Yeah, so I think the majority of people who experience chronic homelessness, which has a specific definition, it's being homeless for more than 3 years, and it's having co-occurring disabilities. So that includes a physical disability and a mental disability, or more than one physical disability or mental disability and addiction, right? Those are by and large men, a smaller population of women. There are some families, but there are a lot more supports that exist for families. It doesn't mean that there are enough supports, but there are more supports that exist for families and children than they do for a single man, for instance. The statistics say, and this is out of the Burn Center at University of Denver. We're really lucky to have a kind of leading national voice in studying homelessness right here in the city. The Burn Center at the University of Denver says that 95% of people who experience homelessness resolve their homelessness within a year.
Wow.
That's pretty good. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those people are leaving the streets and going into a situation that we would really like think of as, stably housed. So they're going and they're living in a hotel, or they're living with family, or they're couch surfing from friends to friends' houses. So they're not literally homeless because they're living in a house, but they don't have their own place that they feel stable about and that helps their family thrive. So there's more support needed there, but it's good that 95% of people do kind of resolve homelessness, or resolve with just a few supports. But the people that After Hours has the most interface with, and that the mayor is talking about, are people that are chronically homeless. They've been homeless for a long time. They've been homeless for years, sometimes years and years, and have very significant mental health issues, and as a part of the mental health issues, addiction issues. The addiction issues always stem from the trauma and mental health issues that put them on the streets in the first place. So, yeah. Yes.
Is it true that the veterans who used to make up a huge percentage of homeless people are very few anymore?
Yeah, veterans, the thing about veterans are that people who can make it into the military in the first place already have some capacity, right? They have if you can make it into the military, if you can get past those screenings and make it in, then you already have something about you that the military has identified and that kind of gives you not a leg up, but it gives you just some resources. Then the military trains you and gives you some resources. And then the supports, because we've identified people who serve their country as people who deserve, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody deserves not to be homeless, but we've kind of identified and said, like, if this person served their country, they should not be homeless. Right, we've kind of like made that as a statement. And so there's been a big push to get those people housed. So there are fewer people who are homeless, who have served in the military, because there are more resources for them. Yeah. More outreach workers, just more money for those kind of vouchers, and more housing that's been kind of like earmarked for people who experience homelessness.
Does that money come from the VA?
A lot of it comes from the VA, yeah.
Mary had a question and then Henry.
Could you give us some examples of some of your Monday night sermon topics? I've heard of.
Oh, sure. Let's see here.
Are they different from our usual?
Sometimes not. Do we have any big Balaam fans in the house? Anybody know Balaam? Balaam's ass. You might have heard of Balaam's
Oh,
ass.
yeah, yes.
I preached about Balaam last week. About he kind of looks out at the tents of Israel, right? They're on the border of Moab, and he looks out at the tents of Israel, and the king is telling him, I need you to curse these Israelites because they're going to come and take all of our stuff. And he can't do it. He tries to do it 3 times and he can't do it. So what is it about his relationship with God that helps him see in a way that's different from the king of Moab? Right. And then of course, because it's me and because it's after hours, I'm like, well, what do you see when you see a homeless encampment? Is it that different than what Balaam saw when he saw the camps of Israel? Maybe not. And yet he still blessed the Israelite people. So do we have a blessing for homeless folks? Do we not just have a blessing, but do we see homeless people as blessed? So that might be one thing that I preach about. Trying to think of something else I preached about recently. They're all pretty forgettable, so no, I'm kidding. But they, I think, I follow the lectionary more often than not. And does everybody know what the lectionary is, right? It's sort of this global suggestion for all churches, like here's what you could be preaching, right? It goes on a 3-year cycle. I just follow the lectionary most of the time. Maybe I'm not that creative, I don't know. But I'm like, I don't know, I'm like, let's just see what they think we should be reading, right? And then I bring that, but the trick is like, how do I like massage this so that it speaks to these folks? Or how do I ask questions that are engaging enough that they can kind of get into that text without it just being a one way kind of message? So it wouldn't be that different. We have one question over here, I think, before we go. Henry, yes.
A number of people, or some, I guess, have difficulty and are taken to jail. Tell us about your relationship with jails, if any.
So you've identified I guess growing edge for me is trying to keep track of people when they do go to jail, and then making those visits into jail. And it's not something that I've done much. I think it's an important part of what After Hours should be doing. I have helped people out and gone and just been kind of a supportive presence when they've had court dates and things like that. It's pretty scary to walk into that building, it's a very fancy, it's like a temple to justice, basically, right? Very fancy building. And I mean, judges even like dress up like ministers. Have you ever noticed that? What's that about? And like the Supreme Court, I'm like, you don't need to wear those robes.
Yeah.
You could wear a suit like a regular old lawyer, but they're like playing at being a pastor of the country, right? That's a little critique for you, Christian critique of the country, but anyway. But so anyway, yeah, I think having that presence at jail would be a big step forward for us at After Hours, and as Christians in general, I think, yeah. And the jail, unfortunately, is a huge provider of mental health resources in the community. Probably the largest. I was in a meeting once where they actually said that we're the largest Pharmacy, we're the largest place where people can access mental health resources. It's like, well, maybe if we had resources to do that somewhere else instead of jail, we'd be better off. We wouldn't have to fund the jail as much, but anyway, yeah,
Gene,
Thank you, Logan.
yeah.
A book that has just come out recently is very supportive of what you're doing. It's called The Power of Ritual, colon, making everyday occurrences or activities into spiritual practices. It's written by a Harvard Divinity School graduate.
Yeah.
And in the book, it indicates that the gym, CrossFit, has become an alternative to church
Huh.
for many, many Americans.
Hmm.
Gym time during Sundays.
Yeah.
Just very supportive, though, however, of what you're doing. Question I have, since you have a bar ministry. How do you deal with the issue of alcoholism for people Medicaid? And you have issues, you know, we have an AA class that meets right after this class here at St. Andrews. How do you deal with the matter of alcoholism with respect to the bar ministry?
Yeah, I can't say that we deal with it much. I mean, if you have issues or problems with alcohol, if you have an alcohol dependency, or if you're in recovery and you're not very stable and feeling very stable in your recovery, after hours is probably not the church for you. I would tell you to go to Free, which is a Methodist church here in town. It's at the old Evanston UMC building down on Evans and can't remember the cross street, right there by DU. Very fast growing ministry, probably says something that they're a very quickly growing ministry, but their whole ministry is based around recovery. So there are churches that have AA groups, there are AA groups, right, which are also very spiritual communities, in my opinion. I think that the after hours model and kind of how Jerry kind of crafted things is not that dissimilar from an AA group. But we're all drinking a beer. But the model of sharing your life, of sharing things that are close to your heart that maybe you're not that proud of, in a place where you feel comfortable, or where there's a place created by others that can help you feel comfortable, is important for all of us, not just people who have or in recovery, or who have issues with alcohol or other drugs. That being said, everybody who comes to after hours doesn't drink. We have a couple teetotalers in the group, they don't drink anything. And I don't actually know for those folks, is it because of issues with their own alcohol consumption or issues in their family with alcohol consumption? My dad was an alcoholic, and that's what killed him, right? So like I've had to work through my own issues with that. So it's not a place that's unfriendly to people who have alcohol issues. But it might not be the right place for you if you're in a spot where you're not feeling comfortable in your recovery. And if I identified that, I think I would have to go to that person. I haven't had that experience, but go to that person and say like, it seems like your drinking is not in a place where this is a healthy place for you. But that being said, we've never gotten through an hour and a half where I've kind of been like, that person's had a lot of drinks tonight. But if I did see that, I would want to say something, say, you know, we might want to talk about a different community for you, or a way that you and I can meet, and maybe we can figure out a way for you to come back to after hours someday, or something like that. Yeah, it's a good question.
we've got about 8 minutes left. Logan, I want to ask you, what about other alternative ministry models today? Since fewer people are coming to traditional churches, St. Andrew, for example, is going out to the retirement centers and doing things there. Should we also be in Starbucks or a CrossFit gym as well as bars? What should new ideas be?
Yeah, the CrossFit gym is interesting because early on when CrossFit kind of started to get popular, I remember I have like I don't know, sort of a sixth sense for this kind of stuff, but like I remember thinking like, this feels kind of evangelical, like capital E American evangelical. There's something about it that's just kind of like odd. And I think that first of all, I think that the people who started CrossFit gyms early on, a lot of them were evangelicals or ex-evangelicals, right? Like ex-evangelicals. And so they've kind of carried, like, people leave behind the like content, but they carry the form forward with them. And so there's something going on there. But obviously it's meeting a deep need for people, not only in their physical fitness, but in a need for community and a need for feeling like I'm accomplishing something on my own, but as part of a group, right? That's a deep need for us as human beings. And so that kind of place, a gym, different clubs, all that stuff used to just exist inside churches, right? And as the kind of Christian form in the culture has been lessened and lessened, people are less willing to go into those churches and to find those kind of clubs and classes like this. But they will engage in the same kind of class outside of the church walls. And so, yeah, I think a Starbucks thing, a church that really said, like, we're not just a ministry of another church, we want to be a church in a Starbucks. Or a other coffee shop, right? Or we're gonna go to a different coffee shop each week or whatever it might be. Could be interesting. Or maybe you have a pancake ministry, or maybe you have a pizza shop ministry, right? Maybe you you love sushi and you're gonna do it at sushi restaurants, or you're gonna make the sushi, everybody's gonna bring ingredients for the sushi and bring it themselves, right? There's also this like dinner church model that started to get going, where it's a potluck, everybody brings dinner, they make a soup, right? And maybe they even have a thing where they bake their own bread, right? And the bread is not just bread for the meal, it's bread for communion, the ritual of communion.
House church.
House church, yeah, so ritualizing, right, and honestly, like,
Yeah.
we have like 2,000 years of accrued ritual that has become this, right, big thing that we do in a very large room, a larger room than you're probably in, right, most of the week. But all that started with very mundane, getting together, having a meal, and then we started doing those things during the meal every time, and then the meal became ritualized, right, and the meal was just like a weird little wafer, right? And so we've reintroduced some of the, like, King's Hawaiian, that's what I want for communion, but that's because I'm a Methodist, and that's kind of what we used at our church back home. So anyway, but yeah, I think ritualizing anything like that and not being weird about it. Like, don't be weird about it. Like, just be cool. Right? And I can't exactly explain what that is, but just be cool, but give these normal things a little bit more meaning. And then you start to meet people who are also looking for a little bit more meaning, who are looking for something a little bit deeper than the surface level that we all sort of bob along at, during our day-to-day lives. Keith.
Considering every municipality in the metro area has almost, I don't say problem, issues.
Yeah.
What kind of a role do you see Dr. Cog playing in possibly trying to address some of that?
Yeah,
Metro-wide.
Dr. Cog often gets brought up, and
Who's that?
I can't remember what it stands for.
Divisional
Governments.
Yeah, Denver Regional Council of
Denver
Governments.
Region Council of Government. Is it-
From them every year.
Yeah, I think they should have a role. But I also think Dr. Cog is kind of like the UN, where, like, the UN can, like, pass whatever resolutions it wants, but unless the United States says, like, we're actually gonna do this,
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen. And so I think Dr. Cog has to be at the table, and I think they could play a great role in shaping that, helping kind of shape the conversation between regional governments. But people who run for mayor of something or for the city council or something don't want somebody else who ran for mayor or city council or something telling them what to do, because the people who run for those kind of things are not the kind of people who like to be told, right? So it's hard. So you have to have like somebody with a bigger stick, right? Come in and say, like, actually, we are going to do this and you have to do it because I say so. So that maybe is at the state level. Then we start to get into politics that people really get riled up about, and we sort of say like, well, we're also part of a country, so maybe the country should, right? But maybe not. Depends on your politics. So, yeah, but I think Dr. Cog should be a part of it. And actually, Dr. Cog it has come up in the meeting, the mayor's weekly meeting. So people are talking about Dr. Cog, what is Dr. Cog's role in this, and how can it be used as kind of a lever to get people to pull in the same direction? And that's the question, is like, how do we get everybody to pull in the same direction? There's also other organizing bodies like the gosh, I have like too many acronyms in my brain. The group that does the homeless management information system, shoot, I'm blanking on it. But yeah, there's a org that channel where the funds from housing and urban development flow through, that manages the continuum of care, which is also the whole region, that also has a role. So there's more than one kind of group that could do that kind of organizing function, but I think Dr. Cog is one of them, in a limited way, because of,
We're about out of time, but Vicky's got a question, and then want to check with Zoomers too. If anybody on Zoom has a question.
And I have time, but I know that people have lives, so.
We gotta wrap up. Okay, go ahead, Vicky.
You said you only have 3 investors in.
3 members.
3 members, okay. What are ways that people can help, support after hours?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, we take donations, right? Some of that, or a significant amount of that money becomes my salary. But a lot of those funds also go to buying supplies for lunches, to buying water, to buying socks, to buying all these different kind of supplies. And so that's, if you go to afterhoursdenver.org, you can make a donation there. And then during our kind of special events during the year, when we have Thankful for Long Johns, which I think we need to do a better job of kind of advertising, making those donations of, people like to donate stuff, right? So making those donations of Long Johns, and it might be that might be a fun way to get a few folks out of the house on Thanksgiving, when you're trying not to have, want people in your kitchen, like, get out of my kitchen, go donate to Long Johns. Right? So that's a great Thanksgiving, and then Christmas in the park, whether it's donating a sleeping bag here at St. Andrew, or some of our other gear, or coming down on Christmas, and even if you're only there for an hour or whatever, that's a great way to kind of catch that as well. And then lunches are made every week here at St. Andrew. And so stopping and making a few lunches is one way. Going downtown after the lunches are made and giving those lunches out with the gyms, who are old pros, and are going to make you feel comfortable and safe and all of that, is a great way to kind of like really catch the power of what it is to make a lunch and then give it to a person who needs it. To look somebody in the eye and smile at them is the goal. Right, the lunch is great, but the goal is like, hey, have a good day. I'm glad you're here, right? I'm glad I could be here to give you this lunch. There's some real power in that, and so I would encourage you to stop by that table and be like, where do these lunches go? How do I get down there? Can I go with you? That kind of thing. Like, that would be great. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you, Logan, for your time today. Okay, see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.